Thank you so much. Merci and thank you. So today I'll start off by talking about the President-elect Joe Biden's decision or the indication of his decision to cancel the Keystone XL project. This doesn't come as a surprise, as he had made similar announcements during the campaign. And broadly speaking, we know that the direction the global markets are headed are that they want to see jobs that help us fight the climate crisis. So we have a responsibility to workers here in Canada, workers who've gone through bust and boom times, that we make investments that create long-term jobs for them. And so this is something that Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister has failed to do. He's failed to make those investments to create those long-term jobs. And we're going to continue to fight to make sure we are creating good jobs that help us fight the climate crisis, that put people to work with good wages. At the same time, we know that COVID-19 continues to devastate our country. We need to get more supports in for people, and we will continue to fight for those, including better access to paid sick leave, supports for seniors living in long-term care homes, and getting help out to small businesses. Donc, on n'est pas surpris par la décision prise par président élu Joe Biden. Il a déjà mentionné dans la campagne qu'il va arrêter le projet de Keystone Pipeline. Et aussi, ça montre encore un autre exemple du fait que le marché mondial veut voir les emplois qui font face à la crise climatique. Ce sont les emplois durables. Les travailleurs et travailleuses au Canada méritent un gouvernement qui milite pour eux, qui fait des investissements pour créer ces emplois. Premier ministre Trudeau a montré un manque de leadership parce qu'il n'a pas fait ces investissements pour créer des emplois de qualité. Donc, on va continuer d'advoquer, on va continuer de pousser pour les investisseurs pour créer des emplois de qualité qui font face à la crise climatique. Deuxièmement, on sait que la COVID-19 continue d'avoir des impacts dévastateurs à travers le pays. On va continuer de pousser, de lutter pour les appuis particulièrement pour rendre accès aux congés de maladie payés plus facile, aussi pour livrer de l'aide pour nos aînés dans les centres de soins de longue durée et de l'aide pour les petites entreprises. On va continuer de se battre pour les gens. Merci et je suis prêt pour prendre vos questions. Thank you so much. I'm ready to take your questions.
Merci, Jagmeet. We are now ready to take questions. If you have a question, just use the raise hand function. Si vous avez des questions, vous pouvez utiliser la fonction raise hand. On va commencer. Première question, David Thurton from the CBC. Go ahead, David.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Singh. Happy New Year. I think this is the first time we're speaking.
That's right.
So I hope you're doing well.
Thank you.
I missed your comments in English on Keystone XL. If you wouldn't mind repeating them for us,
sure,
just so I could have a proper recording.
Sure.
If you want to do that, and then I can ask my question, or I can ask my question now. Which one do you prefer?
I'll repeat it quickly, and then you can ask your question for sure.
Okay, thanks.
So with the decision of President-elect Joe Biden or the decision that seems to be coming to stop Keystone XL project, this is not a surprise. He's indicated this during the campaign. And more importantly, broadly speaking, this is not a surprise given that global markets are making it clearer than ever that the jobs of the future are jobs that help us fight the climate crisis. And that's where we need to make investments. Justin Trudeau has failed on this, has not made the investments to create good jobs that are long lasting, that help us fight the climate crisis. And this decision shows how important it is for us to make those type of investments, and the fact that New Democrats will be fighting to create those good jobs that help us reduce our emissions.
Okay, thanks for that. So I'm guessing you would be against the federal government fighting this executive order in court through some sort of trade tribunal or something like that, because it seems like the Alberta government wants to take that track. Do you think this federal government should join them?
Well, this is a decision. It's no surprise that we've not supported this type of investment. We think that the investments that need to be made, the investments and the money that we spend have to be towards creating long-lasting jobs. And the global markets are indicating very clearly long-lasting jobs are the ones that are helping us fight the climate crisis, that are reducing emissions. So that's where we should be spending our resources, our efforts. Workers deserve it. They need to know that governments are fighting for them. Jason Kenney has shown again and again that he is not willing to look at the evidence or where the global markets are, and he has doubled down on bad investments that do not create jobs for workers. And workers are in a horrible plight in Alberta, largely because of his poor decisions. We need to diversify our economy. We need to invest in good jobs. And this decision is another example of where we need to go. We've said for a long time, we need to be investing in jobs that help us fight the climate crisis.
But you still didn't answer my question. I was hoping you give me a yes or no. Do you think the federal government should join Alberta in fighting this decision through some sort of legal means that, NAFTA or the new NAFTA might have provided?
No, absolutely not. That's what I'm saying. I think that our resources and effort and time and money should not be spent on doubling down on something that's not going to create good jobs for the future. We should be instead investing in jobs for the future. And so let me be absolutely clear. I don't think that's a good use of our time. That's not a good use of our resources. We should be finding ways to create good jobs for these workers that are long lasting and help us fight the climate crisis.
Thank you. Next question, Christopher Reynolds with Canadian Press.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Sorry about that.
Not at all. Hi there.
So what would you say to these workers then, these workers who are very concerned about their livelihoods in the short term, while medium or long-term prospects for green technology jobs might be all well and good in the short term? What would you say to workers who are very concerned that they won't have a means to put food on the table if this pipeline doesn't go ahead?
These workers deserve far better. They need investments right now, and there are ways for us to move immediately to provide supports to create those good jobs. We've seen Justin Trudeau move very quickly to purchase a pipeline that hasn't really borne out the economic advantage that it claimed to have been able to do. And in fact, the forward-looking perspective is that it's not going to be able to create good jobs for workers or long-lasting jobs. We need to make those investments now. We need to support those workers now. It's clear that the approach that Justin Trudeau has taken, that Jason Kenney has taken, doubling down on jobs that are not sustainable, that are not long-lasting, is not in the interest of these workers. These workers deserve far better. We need an immediate plan, urgently, to create good jobs that are long-lasting. Workers deserve to know that governments are working to build jobs for them that are going to be there for the long run. So far, Justin Trudeau has failed to do that. We need to see those investments immediately.
Over the weekend, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole put out a statement disavowing any links with right-wing, or I should say hard right-wing or right supremacist groups or values or opinions. I'm wondering if you take his statement at face value and believe that his statement comes in good faith, and that there are no real links between the Conservative Party and right-wing or ultra right-wing or white nationalist groups.
I think he needs to continue to repeat that message. If he wants Canadians to believe that, he needs to make sure that's a consistent and clear approach, not one that's done in reaction to some of his colleagues being found wearing MAGA hats, or in reaction to pictures that show perhaps his team being linked to the Proud Boys or other organizations. He needs to do it proactively, and we need to see that continued. And so disavowing, of course, is a good step, but I think Canadians want to see a continued, sustained, clear message that the Conservatives will not in any way align themselves with these extreme right-wing groups that are a real threat to Canadian security.
Thank you.
Merci. Prochaine question, Catherine Lévesque de la Presse canadienne. Catherine?
Oui, pardon, on devrait m'écouter. On devrait m'entendre plutôt. Bonjour, M. Singh. J'aimerais vous entendre de nouveau sur Keystone XL. Juste pour être clair, c'est une bonne nouvelle, selon vous, le fait que Joe Biden veuille canceller le projet?
Je suis d'accord avec la décision. J'ai déjà mentionné dans le passé que je n'appuie pas ce projet. Mais pour moi, c'est un autre exemple de manque de leadership de Justin Trudeau, le fait qu'il n'a pas investi dans la création des emplois de qualité qui font face à la crise climatique. C'est essentiel maintenant. Le marché mondial montre clairement que les emplois du futur sont les emplois qui font face à la crise climatique et on doit le faire maintenant. Je suis inquiet pour les travailleurs et travailleuses qui ont peur maintenant et ça, c'est pourquoi on doit faire des investissements de maintenant pour créer des bons emplois qui font face à la crise climatique.
Et qu'est-ce que tout ça veut dire pour l'avenir de Trans Mountain, à votre avis, cette décision de Keystone XL? Est-ce que ça veut dire que dorénavant, tous les projets sont vraiment menacés? Puis ça, est-ce que c'est une bonne nouvelle en soi pour le NPD?
J'ai déjà dit que le pipeline Trans Mountain a des problèmes. C'était toujours un problème pour la communauté autochtone, pour l'impact sur l'environnement. Et aussi, en même temps, ce n'est pas un plan, ils n'ont pas un plan économique qui montre qu'ils vont réussir à créer des emplois de qualité. Donc, au lieu de donner l'argent à un projet qui ne va pas fonctionner pour créer des emplois, dans mon avis, il faut investir pour créer des emplois du futur. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on propose avec les idées de rénovation éco-énergétique, l'idée d'investir plus dans le transport en commun, l'électrification de transport en général. Il y a plusieurs façons de créer des bons emplois et c'est là où on va trouver des emplois durables pour le long terme.
Merci. If there are any other questions, I encourage you to use the raise hand function. S'il y a d'autres questions, je vous encourage d'utiliser la fonction raise hand. Je vais attendre une couple d'autres minutes. Oh, je vois quelqu'un. La prochaine question, c'est de Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. Laurence?
Oui, bonjour, M. Singh.
Bonjour.
Je suis curieuse de vous entendre. Bon, vous dites, je suis d'accord, je n'appuie pas ce projet. En même temps, vous dites qu'il faut faire une transition. En même temps, cette transition, elle ne peut pas arriver demain matin. Ça, je pense que tout le monde est d'accord là-dessus. En quoi est-ce que ce projet Keystone XL nous empêchait de faire une transition climatique?
Donc, avec ce projet, les problèmes, ça n'ouvre pas un nouveau marché. Donc, c'était toujours un problème parce que ça ne donne pas une nouvelle façon d'aider les travailleurs de ce secteur. Et en général, comme j'ai dit, on doit pas seulement de maintenant, on devait le faire dans le passé, mais on doit le faire maintenant avec une urgence d'investir pour créer des emplois maintenant. Et on peut le faire. Il n'y a pas une barrière, c'est seulement un manque de volonté au part du gouvernement libéral et Justin Trudeau. On peut dès maintenant commencer à créer des bons emplois, investir dans les secteurs pour créer des emplois qui sont durables et d'aider ces travailleurs dès maintenant. Ce sont des éléments essentiels pour aller de l'avant.
Laurence, as-tu un suivi?
Oui, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, maintenant.
OK, oui, excusez-moi. Je comprends que vous dites que ça n'ouvre pas un nouveau marché parce que ça va vers le golfe du Mexique. Mais en même temps, l'Alberta disait c'est ce genre de projet qui nous permet de désenclaver notre pétrole et de le vendre, de ne plus le vendre à rabais comme c'est le cas en ce moment, parce que le problème, c'est qu'il est enclavé en ce moment. Donc, j'essaie de savoir en quoi est-ce que, si l'Alberta dit qu'elle a besoin de ce projet-là, pourquoi est-ce que vous vous y opposez?
Donc, ce qu'on a vu avec les décisions de Jason Kenney, il ne regarde pas la preuve. La preuve est claire. Les marchés globaux veulent voir des emplois qui font face à la crise climatique. Et pour créer des emplois de qualité, ça nous mérite d'investir nos ressources fédérales pour créer des emplois, les emplois qui vont être durables. Ça, c'est essentiel. Et avec ce projet, ça va être le même problème qui a été soulevé depuis des années, que c'est le seul marché, c'est les États-Unis. Et c'était toujours un problème pour les travailleurs parce qu'il y a un manque d'opportunités avec un seul marché. Donc, ce n'était pas un projet qui aurait dû soulever, régler le problème qui était un problème pour l'Alberta, pour ce secteur depuis des années. Et ce qu'il doit faire, ce qu'on doit faire dès maintenant, c'est vraiment de penser pour le futur. Comment on peut aider les travailleurs d'avoir des bons emplois, de ne pas tomber dans cette même situation où on a des bons moments et puis des mauvais moments. C'était exactement l'histoire de ce secteur pour plusieurs emplois, pour plusieurs travailleurs et travailleuses. On va changer ça en investissement dans le futur.
Before I go back to second round of questions, I'm going to see if there are any other journalists on the line who haven't asked a question and would like to ask a question. I encourage you to use the raise hand function. S'il y a des journalistes sur la ligne qui n'ont pas déjà posé des questions, je vais passer à vous en premier. Sinon, on va passer aux deuxième question parce qu'on a encore 8 minutes. I'll go back to David Thurton with CBC.
Mr. Singh, do you still support BC's Coastal Link gas pipeline? What's your stance on that?
I've always maintained that this is a project that creates jobs and that BC government has one of the most ambitious plans to fight the climate crisis. Given their plan to fight the climate crisis, one of the best in North America, and the opportunity to create jobs, I support the BC government's path towards creating a brighter future.
So where's the gulf between Keystone XL, Trans Mountain? What's the difference between that and the Coastal Link? Is it just that Alberta doesn't have a credible plan to reduce emissions? Is that why you're not supporting it? Because your provincial counterpart, of course, supports these pipelines. Rachel Notley.
Well, what we've seen is there's a massive problem with Trans Mountain. They don't have a clear economic case. It's clear that they don't know if this is actually going to create more jobs or not. And there's very vigorous opposition in terms of the Indigenous communities and the environmental claims concerns. With Keystone XL, again, we have a similar problem where it's not going to create new opportunities. It's going to the United States. And overall, the approach has been to double down on not creating jobs of the future. What I want to see happen is the good, hardworking people across this country, particularly hard hit in Alberta, they need to know that there's being investments that create jobs for them in the long term. There is clearly a direction that the global markets are headed in. And if we are not willing to look at that, then we're not going to be able to make good decisions. So far, Justin Trudeau hasn't been able to make the type of decisions to create the long-term jobs that those workers deserve. And that's why I've been really clear. We need to make the investments that create jobs in our community that help us fight the climate crisis.
Laurence, avant que je vienne à toi, je vais juste sauter à Global News parce qu'ils n'ont pas déjà posé une question. Lawrence, before I come to you and Christopher, I'm going to skip the line and go to Global News just because they haven't already asked a question. So Global, if you could introduce who is speaking and you can go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Singh. It's Marc-Andre Cassel with Global News. Thanks for taking my question. Of course. I just wonder if you can react to how you expect workers in Alberta, Albertans in general, to react to you saying today that you welcome this decision. What are they supposed to make of that? How are they supposed to react?
Well, I want to be very clear. I support the decision because I know that this is the direction that the future requires. We've got to fight the climate crisis. I've already said that this isn't a project that I support, but I think that these workers have been left out, been left to hang to dry because there hasn't been decisions made to create jobs that are sustainable, that are long-term for them. We have seen already that the global markets have dictated that the oil in Canada has a lot of volatility. The markets have been up and down. It's created bust and boom times. It's been very difficult for workers. They deserve better than that. And if we made investments now to create good, long-lasting jobs, workers would be better off. They deserve a government that's going to fight for them. So far, Justin Trudeau hasn't made the investments to create those good jobs. Jason Kenney is doubling down on bad decision after bad decision that is hurting Alberta. The economy needs to be diversified. They need to know that there's good, long-lasting jobs. We are going to fight for them to make sure that jobs are there for them for the future, not just in the precarity and the volatility that we've seen in the past years.
Right, and I think a lot of people would agree with the idea of transitioning over the long term, but a lot of people have very real short-term concerns. They're wondering whether they still have a job, how they're going to provide for their family. So, you know, you talk about making investments, but what concrete investments could you make in the short term that could provide any sort of reinsurance to those workers who, again, don't know how they're going to make ends meet?
Well, there's a number of deep oil wells across Alberta that need to be closed up properly, cleaned up properly, and can be transitioned immediately to geothermal energy. Those are jobs that can be created right now if we hired people to remediate those sites that are right now, many of them abandoned, left in states of disrepair. That can be an immediate job creation strategy right now. We could look at immediately investing in energy retrofits. A lot of the same skills and talent developed in the Alberta sector can immediately transition towards jobs to retrofit buildings, large-scale buildings, commercial buildings, as well as homes, to reduce emissions, to lower the costs on energy, and also to create great jobs. We can invest immediately in public transit that will create jobs across this country. We need to make those decisions immediately, and any one of these decisions, and with real investments, would create jobs in not the long term, but the immediate term.
On va retourner à Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. On a, si tu peux juste faire une question, Laurence, puis on va donner Christopher la chance de sa dernière question aussi, vu qu'on n'a pas trop de temps.
Oui, bien, je me demandais, Monsieur Singh, vous dites qu'il faut faire des investissements là, pour aider les travailleurs du pétrole avec la transition. Et vous critiquez les libéraux en disant qu'ils n'en font pas suffisamment. Puis là, quand on vous demande quels investissements concrets est-ce que vous proposez, les 3 solutions, là, puits orphelin, rénovation éco-énergétique, investissement dans les transports publics, sont toutes des choses que les libéraux ont mis de l'avant et ont proposé et ont promis là, dans la dernière année. Donc, quels investissements concrets est-ce que vous proposez que les libéraux n'ont pas fait?
Ce qu'ils ont fait, c'est seulement les belles paroles. Ce qu'on propose, c'est des actions concrètes. Ils n'ont pas, jusqu'à ce moment, livré la marchandise. Ce n'est pas suffisant de seulement dire, oh oui, on va faire ça. Il faut le faire. Et c'est les travailleurs et travailleuses qui vont être dans une situation difficile sans action du gouvernement fédéral. Donc, avec la remédiation des anciens centres où on a accès au nul, c'est exactement quelque chose qu'on peut faire dès maintenant. On peut donner des investissements pour encourager une création des emplois immédiatement. Ce sont des choses qu'on peut faire, mais le problème, c'est avec le gouvernement libéral, c'est il donne des belles paroles, mais c'est où l'action?
Merci, Laurence. We're going to go next to Christopher with Canadian Press for the last question. Christopher, go ahead.
Hello again, Mr. Singh. I'm just wondering, I'm curious, has Leaders Debates Commissioner David Johnston reached out to the party with questions about debates during a potential election this spring? And if so, what does that say to you?
Well, I think on the general topic, I can say it's very clear to me that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are angling towards an election this spring. It is very obvious in the steps they're taking. They were looking for an election back in November when they made an opposition day motion into a confidence motion. And I want to be clear, I think this is irresponsible. Right now, every effort of the federal government should be towards making sure all Canadians are vaccinated. That should consume all the time and effort. That should be the #1 priority. The fact that Justin Trudeau is more interested in, or equally interested in, trying to get an election is not responsible, given the severity of the situation and the important role the federal government plays across the country in making sure that the vaccine is procured, as well as supporting the rollout. So I think that's a key problem. Specifically with the whether we were reached out to speak about questions about the debate, I am not aware of any contact of that nature, but I can get back to you if my national director or chief of staff have been contacted, and it's recent that we can let you know.
Thank you. Merci. This concludes the press conference. Merci, Jagmeet.
Merci. Thank you.